This example shows how you can use OPC Router templates to dynamically create multiple connection instances. A typical application of this would be for when you wanted to log multiple tag values into a SQL database of your choice. For example, a simple historian, or perhaps if you want to do some filtering on the tags, capture only on change or over a maximum time period, maybe every 1 or maximum 5 seconds, for example. And you've got lots of these things you need to configure. So what OPC Router provides, as you know, is a number of different plugins. You can choose the plugins that are required. Those are the licensed items. So here we can see all the different plugins. In my case, I've configured an OPC UA client. So we've linked to the process simulator and OPC UA data coming in here. And I have configured a Microsoft SQL database connection that we'll be using for logging the values to. What we've also done is under the options section, configured the dynamic instances API. So what this does is it sets up, it does require a Microsoft SQL installation. I'm making use of Microsoft SQL Express. There's not going to be a huge requirement for volumes of information here, so Express should be sufficient if you're using another database that you're logging to. Otherwise, of course, you could use the same one. So setting up the link, creating that database structure, and then we can check that that is connected. All right. Then the next step is to go and create the template for the connection that you require. So in this case, we've added in, and from the right-hand side here, I have added an OPC data change trigger. You can simply drag that on and it'll create that block. And in this case, let's delete that one. I have configured the data change. So what happens when we're creating with a template is, of course, we're not browsing a particular tag. We create an address variable that's going to get substituted later on. So what I have done is I've added in the particular access. Of course, that could also be a variable. I've set this up to record at most every second and when there is a difference of more than 1%. So the variable must change by more than 1%, and if it does change rapidly, it won't capture it faster than every second. All right, so once we've configured that, we end up with a block that then presents us with access to that value, the quality, the timestamps, and so on. The database block, simply set up, select the configuration, the plugin that I'm connecting to. I'm doing an insert, select the table. I'm then presented with the columns that I require. These are the ones that I've selected for inputs. And then one simply drags across the connections to configure that. So we've got a value going to the value column, quality ID, which is an integer going into the quality, and so on. Then I've set up some constants. So I want to be able to create my own tag name, and I want the location of the tag name as well, so I can create some sort of a hierarchy for once I make use of this database. Of course, that could be anything you require. There could be other actions that you're doing in here, other calculations, and then inserting that into the database as well. But this very simple example is the template that I require. So once we've got the template, you then just right-click on that template, and you can create a dynamic instance from that template. So what that allows us to do is to create, I'm going to create a line 2 instance, and it wants to know if I want to put it in a particular folder or location. I'm just doing it on the base location. I can create that instance, and if we go and look at our connections, we'll see there I have a new instance created. So because I've chosen to use the dynamic API, what that instance does, I'm going to switch across to my Microsoft SQL here. So what the instance does is in the dynamic tables, We can now go and see that it creates these tables here. I haven't, sorry, first thing we've got to do is just go productive on that. So it's a new one, it hasn't created it yet, so we go productive. And now if we go back and look, we should see that SQL table. All right, so there's our SQL table. So should we wish to, we can now start a log using that particular dynamic API. So what I'll do is, let me just modify this. We're going to insert, and this is going to be my line 2. And what we're doing is inserting into that table the current date time, the instance name that we want to create for the new connection, the address, and these are the parameters that are going to get substituted into the template. So these obviously depend on whatever you've created on the template, and then we're going to just insert those in. So let's go and do that. And I'm going to execute that. All right, so what we see is we've added an entry into that dynamic API. So this could, of course, come in from anywhere. This could come in from an external application. It could be as your app via SCADA. You just write in the details of what it is you want to log. And in the OPC router, if we go back, we'll see that we have configured a dynamic log. So just by doing the insert into the dynamic API database table, OPC Router automatically then configures that connection based on the template selected. It's substituted in the parameters that we provided, and it started logging the data. In this particular case, if we go back to that template and have a look, we've also enabled the store and forward, so that if there are any issues, the database is down or something's not available, information will be buffered and then pushed through later on. So that's up and running. Let's go and have a look at the database table again. In this case, we want to have a look at our historical data. You can see we just had a random and a sinusoid value there. And now if we query it, we'll see that sawtooth value that we've added for line 2 is also now being logged in the system. So this is a very easy way where we can create a dynamic API that allows you to externally configure the OPC router by simply inserting a line into a SQL database table. That route is then, that connection is then configured and executes immediately, and we get our results.